making do and doing the best. Like Periscope would just be glitchy, and I guess now Haps just decides to shut her down. So it gave me an option, end broadcast. I apologize. It's not my fault. Sometimes when large trucks go past, it knocks my Wi-Fi out for a minute, and apparently Haps does not like that. So I'm using cellular data now. Oh, I hope. No, a big truck went by. I hope Andrew gets back in here. Sometimes when a really big truck comes by at a certain time, a certain way, it knocks my Wi-Fi out. It's because I have satellite. I have satellite internet. What did it do? I mean, it did happen like right as you gave me the heart. Like it did do something, but I'm positive it didn't. It wasn't you because a truck came by. I heard it. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm going to read this poem, and I hope that Andrew gets back in here. But I'll read this poem. The night dances, and if you've already read this poem, when I shop for my books, where do I go? I have a Barnes and Nobles close to me, so that's one place I look, but often they don't have like what I want. So I order it from various places, or I buy used. I do like to buy used books if they're in good condition, so you can get them cheaper. And when you consume as many books as I do, any few dollars that you can spare here and there, and if you can get the same book, then I go for it. eBay, sometimes Amazon. It just depends. There are other oh my gosh, what? I buy all kinds of books, Kelly. I buy all kinds. Andrew, we've started another stream. Get in here. No, I lost it. It was me. It was me, Andrew. A big truck came by and knocked my Wi-Fi out, so I'm using cellular data now. So I apologize. Where was the bookstore that I was using recently that I liked? Also, a lot of times, and which I meant to show you guys, and I'm gonna have to do this soon. I can't see. A lot of times, not a lot of times, but I buy like kind of off the main path books, and sometimes the authors will be selling them directly from their website. If they do that, then I love to buy directly from them. I feel like you get. Oh, not again. Am I still here? Can you guys say something? Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I'm just going to press on. It's saying my bars are saying it's great. Okay. Let's read this poem. And how do you like it? Have you read it yet, or has it come to you? The night dances. Have you read this poem, Andrew and Kelly, by Sylvia Plath? Which, by the way, apparently there is um, a special collections, a Sylvia Plath special collection in Bloomington, Indiana, at the university there. I was just made aware of it um, in my intranet wanderings, and that is a very drivable distance for me. I may have to go check it out. They have like her personal journals and personal effects, a lock of her hair. Um, anyway, the night dances. A smile fell in the grass, irretrievable. And how will your night dances and how will your night dances lose themselves in mathematics? Such pure leaps and spirals, surely they travel the world forever. I shall not entirely sit emptied of beauties, the gift of your small breath, the drenched grass, smell of your sleeps, lilies, lilies. Their fresh flesh bears no relation. Cold folds of ego, the calla and the tiger embellishing itself, spots and spread of hot petals. The comets have such a space to cross, such coldness, forgetfulness, so your gestures flake off, warm and human, then their pink light bleeding and peeling through the black amnesias of heaven. Why am I given these lamps, these planets, falling like blessings, like flakes, six-sided, white, on my eyes, my lips, my hair, touching and melting nowhere? I butchered that, but just look that poem up and read it like 5 times, and try not to be completely and utterly in love with Sylvia Plath, the cosmos, flowers, life. Um, the night dances. Also, just made me think after reading this about how absolutely like delicious night becomes in the summertime. Just like in winter, how I just live for like a sunny day in winter. I just live for it. Like, won't the sun just come out in wintertime? And when it happens, I'm like, oh my God, this is heaven on earth. Um, I'm so just delighted on a sunny winter day. And in the summer, the nights become just like these perfumed, humid, breezy, just, dare I use the word, erotic um, experiences. And that made me think of it. And here, um, the night sky is so amazing where I live. Like, I can walk out on a clear night and see just so many stars, and like you can almost see like the Milky Way over the fields, and that she's talking about flowers are like on her face, and like she's watching the night. People much smarter and more well spoken than me have done their own analysis of these poems, none of which I've read. Um, but I just have such an experience when I read that poem. Okay, if you're ready, we will begin part 2 of Siddhartha. And I thought I had an idea yesterday come to me, and you tell me if you think this is good or not. If this is a good idea. The next book that we read, let's make it a public domain book, and let's record, like, let's use this phone and record it on like Anchor or something and make a podcast out of it, because I want to learn how to do podcasts. That's one of the things that on my list of things I want to learn how to do. Would you listen to a podcast of me? Even though I ramble, and it could be reading slash audio journal slash reading. I don't know. Anyway, then we could diversify our media. This oh, good, I'm glad. I'll talk about this maybe at the end. I was gonna go off on another one, but I'll save it till the end, maybe, if I can remember it. Kamala. And to recap, just briefly, Siddhartha met the Buddha Gautama in the grove. He left the grove. He left Gautama. He left Govinda. And he set out on foot and he became awakened. What does that mean? What does awakened mean? He realized that up until this point, he had been running away from the self, the capital S self. He'd been running away from it. Even when he was sitting like an ascetic under a tree and starving himself to death, he had been running away from it, away from himself. It's such a mind trip to be reading this and reading about, like, contemplating this and reading about Walt Whitman at this time, who almost has an opposite way to get to almost the same place. Also, the book that I'm reading, What is the Grass? The guy who writes this book has a decidedly like fixed point of view and interpretation of Whitman's poems. And he's viewing it from the lens of a heterosexual man. And he's pulling up all of these instances in which he's like, see, basically, the past few chapters have been, this was about heterosexual love. This was about heterosexual love, and just regurgitating this theme over and over again. And it's so wild to read this perspective, because like when I read it, like I have a completely, obviously, I have a completely different reading of it. When I read it, and I become in this. It's a transcendental experience for me when he's talking about the reeds and the like commingling with nature. And this guy, Mark Doty, he's saying this represents sex. This represents heterosexual coupling here, and it's so blatant to him. So blatant. Yes. Within the past couple of years, 2019 maybe. Whereas it's so interesting to see his interpretation, because am I a prude? But I'm like, I just don't see this as sexual, as less sexual and more just completely transcendental, like like being on drugs or something, without being on drugs. I don't know how to explain it, but being high on life. And to bring it back, Whitman has this way of like being in his body, talking about the body. Like the body is in a way, not in a way, the body is poetry, right? The body is electric. The body, here we are manifest in this avatar, and we can see and we can taste and we can love and sing, and he's coming to like when I read Whitman and when I read Leaves of Grass, I'm like, yes, I'm becoming in my body. Like I am grateful that I'm in this like animal. I'm inhabiting this animal place where I can experience like nature and the grass and the reeds and the water and the plains and the forests and appreciate it and be here now. Juxtaposed is the whole path of Siddhartha, where he's sitting under a tree, but he's checked out. He's checked out, man. He's like, he's in this other plane. He's um in this bardo of meditation constantly, right? Or he has been. And now he's awakened. So what do we do now? What do we do now? We realize that the only way out is through, is in. What would you do? Well, Kamala. Siddhartha learned something new on every step of his path, for the world was transformed and he was enthralled. That's how I feel too. I think you'll be maybe a little bit disappointed when you read this book when I send it to you. Maybe not. Maybe you will be. I feel like I'm a little bit disappointed. However, um I think probably what he set out to, I mean, the whole premise of the book is what is the grass, and it's my life. It's like his life with Walt Whitman. Like it's like an autobiography of um reading Whitman, and like he's like, how do I explain it? Traveling in his life through memories, through mostly through memories, and kind of using Whitman as a foil to his own life. And the man who wrote it is homosexual. Not, did I keep saying, I said heterosexual before? Homosexual. Oh my god. Homosexual. That's what I kept trying to, I meant trying, I meant to say homosexual before, not heterosexual. Please forgive me. As a homosexual man growing up closeted, so he has really latched on to Whitman's homosexuality, and has made these strong, very strong cases where almost everything he's writing about is writing about homosexuality. Like homosexuality. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I felt the same way about the camaraderie and communal love, and anyway, there's a place for it. Like I think that if I was a homosexual man, closeted, um perhaps I would find great um relief in reading Whitman as well. Um, and so, like, the whole second part of the book is almost entirely about um, the homosexual angle of Whitman and on in his poems, and how it interplays with his own life. And it felt very narrow. It felt like a very narrow hallway. Um, my whole point for this was meaning Whitman really embodies the body, and reading that book and reading this book is kind of a trip. Like, there's a million ways to get to the same place, right? There's as many ways to get there as there are people. Siddhartha learned something new on every step of his path, for the world was transformed and he was enthralled. He saw the sun rise over forest and mountains and set over the distant palm shore. At night he saw the stars in the heavens and the sickle-shaped moon floating like a boat in the blue. He saw trees, stars, animals, clouds, rainbows, rocks, weeds, flowers, brook and river, the sparkle of dew on bushes in the morning, distant high mountains, blue and pale, birds sang, bees hummed, the wind blew gently across the rice fields. We are Walt Whitman, we are Richard Jefferies, we are Emerson at this point. All of this, colored and in 1,000 different forms, had always been there. The sun and the moon had always shone, the rivers had always flowed, and the bees had hummed. But in previous times, all this had been nothing to Siddhartha but a fleeting and elusive veil before his eyes, regarded with distance, condemned to be disregarded and ostracized from thoughts because it was not reality, because reality lay on the other side of the visible. But now his eyes lingered on this side. He saw and recognized the visible, and he sought his place in the world. He did not seek reality. His goal was not on any other side. The world was beautiful when looked at in this way, without any seeking, so simple, so childlike. The moon and the stars were beautiful, the brook, the shore, the forest and the rock, the goat and the golden beetle, the flower and butterfly were beautiful. There's so many butterflies flying around my house and everywhere right now. It's so beautiful. I wish there were more words for beautiful. I feel like English really leaves us wanting. It was beautiful and pleasant to go through the world like that, so childlike, so awakened, so concerned with the immediate, without any distrust. Elsewhere, the sun burned fiercely. Elsewhere, there was cool in the forest shade. Elsewhere, there were pumpkins and bananas. The days and nights were short. Every hour passed quickly like a sail on the sea. Beneath the sail of a ship of treasures, full of joy, Siddhartha saw a group of monkeys in the depths of the forest, moving about high in the branches, and heard their wild, eager cries. Siddhartha saw a ram follow a sheep and mate. In a lake of rushes, he saw the pike making chase in evening hunger. Swarms of young fishes fluttering and glistening. Hi, Lars. Welcome. Welcome to Haps. And you just missed my rant about Whitman, Walt Whitman. My rant, my ramble. We're reading Siddhartha, though, and this is a good part. But welcome to Haps. And Smook. Am I pronouncing it right? We should just collect every word for beautiful and interchange them. Smook. 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 Everyone follow Lars. Welcome him to Haps, and hopefully I'm following you. I'll have to remember to do that when I get off of here. Siddhartha, okay. Swarms of young fishes Steph, how are you? Oh, everyone's coming in now. Swarms of young fishes, fluttering and glistening, moved anxiously away from it. Strength and desire were reflected in the swiftly moving whirls of water formed by the raging pursuer. Good. We're reading Siddhartha and collecting the names, the word for beautiful in every language on earth. That would be like how many languages? Thousands, maybe, but conventionally, like probably only like 300. Smell these, and then we'll keep reading. Strength and desire was reflected in the swiftly moving whirls of water formed by the raging pursuer. All this had always been and he had never seen it. He was never present. Now he was present and belonged to it. Through his eyes he saw light and shadows. Through his mind he was aware of moon and stars. On the way, Siddhartha remembered all that he had experienced in the garden of Jetavana, the teachings that he had heard there from the holy Buddha, the parting from Govinda, and the conversation with the illustrious one. He remembered each word that he had said to the illustrious one, and he was astonished that he had said things which he did not then really know. What had he said to the Buddha? That the Buddha's wisdom and secret was not teachable, that it was inexpressible and incommunicable, in which he had once experienced in an hour of enlightenment. It was just what he had now set off to experience, what he was now beginning to experience. He must gain experience himself. He had known for a long time that his self was Atman, of the same eternal nature as Brahman, but he had never really found his self because he had wanted to trap it in the net of thoughts. Don't trap the self in the net of thoughts, guys. The body was certainly not the self, nor the play of senses, nor thought, nor understanding, nor acquired wisdom or art with which to draw conclusions, and from already existing thoughts to spin new thoughts. No, this world of thought was still on this side, and it led to no goal when one destroyed the senses of the incidental self, but fed it with thoughts in erudition. Both thought and the senses were fine things. Behind both of them lay hidden the last meaning. It was worthwhile listening to them both, to play with both, neither to despise nor overrate either of them, but to listen intently to both voices. He would only strive after whatever the inward voice commanded him, not tarry anywhere but where the voice advised him. Why did Gautama once sit down beneath the bo tree in his greatest hour, when he received enlightenment? Lalo, good morning. Good morning. We're talking about enlightenment and Whitman and lilacs. And oh, thank you so much. Smell these, Lalo. They smell really good. And this is just a tiny little bouquet that I plucked from the bush. I'm so happy about it. Why, guys? Why did Gautama once sit down beneath the bo tree in his greatest hour when he received enlightenment? We are getting to a good part here. We are. Oh my gosh! Thank you, Lars. You guys are so generous. We're getting to a part where more characters are going to be introduced, but we have to get through this material enlightenment that he's going through right now. He had heard a voice in his own heart, which commanded him to seek rest under this tree, and had not taken recourse to mortification of the flesh, sacrifices, bathings or prayers, eating or drinking, sleeping or dreaming. He had listened to the voice, to obey no other external command, only the voice, to be prepared. That was good. That was necessary. Nothing else was necessary. Listen to your own. Yes, yes. See, you can do coffee broadcasts, Lalo. During the night, he slept in a ferryman's straw hut. Siddhartha had a dream. He dreamt that Govinda stood before him in the yellow robe of the ascetic. Govinda looked sad and asked him, "Why did you leave me?" Thereupon he embraced Govinda, put his arm round him, and as he drew, you can. And as he drew him to his breast and kissed him, he was Govinda no longer, but a woman, and out of the woman's gown emerged a full breast, and Siddhartha lay there and drank, sweet and strong, tasted the milk from this breast. It tasted of woman and man, of sun and forest, of animal and flower, of every fruit, of every pleasure. It was intoxicating. When Siddhartha awoke, the pale river shimmered past the door of the hut, and in the forest the cry of an owl rang out, deep and clear. Oh, I want to spin off about Grapes of Wrath right now, but I won't. As the day began, Siddhartha asked his host, the ferryman, to take him across the river. Who has had just amazing, like, vivid dream like that? I had one recently, and I shared it with you all about. I was in this like pool, and a seal came up, and I felt just such love for this seal, and I gave this seal a hug, and I was like, caressing this seal, and when I looked at the seal again, it was a man, like a beautiful man. I can relate, Siddhartha. As the day began, Siddhartha asked his host, the ferryman, to take him across the river. The ferryman took him across on his bamboo raft. The broad, sheer sheet of water glimmered pink in the light of the morning. "It's a beautiful river," he said to his companion. "Yes," said the ferryman, "it is a very beautiful river. I love it above everything. I have often listened to it, gazed at it, and I've always learned something from it. One can learn much from a river." I in my dream, it the man was kind, um as all like shape-shifting mythical creatures. It was like almost like what's the Scottish fairy tale folklore about selkies? It was almost that, only it was like a man version. You always hear about women. Oh, I hadn't thought about it from that angle yet. I hadn't thought about like a selkie angle yet. Um, there was a wonderful movie made about this, kind of encircled this legend, but it wasn't really about the legend. It was about the interpersonal relationships of the characters, and I cannot remember the name of it, nor do I remember the name of the main character. I can see their faces, but I can't remember. So I'll have to post it later. This is the cool thing about Haps. When I go look this movie up, which I will, I'm going to go post it here, and maybe everyone who has commented will get a notice, perhaps. I don't know. Um, about this movie, but it was a beautiful movie. So if you like the ocean, if you like um, kind of dramas about love and relationships, this is a wonderful movie. I wish I could think of it. One can learn much from a river. You can learn so much from a river. Thank you, good man. I live between two major rivers in the United States. Like, there's the Tigris and Euphrates, the cradle of civilization. I live between the Ohio and the Mississippi, which two like most giant rivers in the United States. "Thank you, good man," said Siddhartha as he landed on the other side. "I'm afraid I have no gift to give you, nor any payment. I am homeless, a Brahmin's son and a samana." "I could see that," said the ferryman, "and I did not expect any payment or gift from you. You will give it to me some other time." Do you think so? Said Siddhartha merrily. Certainly. I have learned that from the river too. Everything comes back. You too, Samana, will come back. Now farewell. May your friendship be my payment. May you think of me when you sacrifice to the gods. Smiling, they parted from one another. Siddhartha was pleased at the ferryman's friendliness. He is like Govinda, he thought, smiling. All whom I meet on the way are like Govinda. All are grateful, although they themselves deserve thanks. Oh, Lala. All are subservient. All wish to be my friend, to obey, and to think little. People are children. I don't know what to think about this paragraph. Let me read it again. Smiling, they parted from each other. Siddhartha was pleased at the ferryman's friendliness. He is like Govinda, he thought, smiling. All whom I meet on the way are like Govinda. All are grateful, although they themselves deserve thanks. All are subservient. All wish to be my friend, to obey, and to think little. People are children. I don't. That seems a bit. Siddhartha seems like maybe he's. What am I saying? Does Siddhartha think he's somehow superior to everyone? To Govinda, because it, like, he's saying all whom I meet on the way are like Govinda. Sounds like he's missing his friend. Govinda was the real deal. At midday, he passed through a village. Children danced about in the lane in front of the clay huts. They played with the pumpkin stones and mussels. They shouted and wrestled with each other, but ran away timidly when the strange Samana appeared. At the end of the village, the path went alongside a brook. At the end of the brook, a young woman was kneeling and washing clothes. When Siddhartha greeted her, she raised her head and looked at him with a smile so that he could see the whites of her eyes shining. Maybe he's just realizing that he too is like a child because he was smiling. That everyone is a child on the inside. We're all walking around like little flower smelling children. And we can delight in simple things like the company of one another. He called across a benediction as is customary among travelers, and asked how far the road still was to the large town. Thereupon she stood and came towards him, her moist lips gleaming attractively in her young face. She exchanged light remarks with him, asked him if he had yet eaten, and whether it was true that the Samanas slept alone in the forest at night and were not allowed to have any women with them. She then placed her left foot on his right and made a gesture such as a woman makes when she invites a man to that kind of enjoyment of love, which the holy books call ascending the tree. Well, if it was just as simple as putting my foot on top of another's, right? Siddhartha felt his blood kindle, and as he recognized his dream again at that moment, he stooped a little towards the woman and kissed the brown tip of her breast. Looking up, he saw her face smiling, full of desire, and her half-closed eyes pleading with longing. Siddhartha also felt a longing and the stir of sex in him, but as he had never yet touched a woman, he hesitated a moment, although his hands were ready to seize her. At that moment, he heard his inward voice, and the voice said, "No." Then all the magic disappeared from the young woman's smiling face. He saw nothing but the ardent glance of a passionate young woman. Gently he stroked her cheek and quickly disappeared from the disappointed woman into the bamboo wood. Before evening of that day, he reached a large town, and he was glad because he had a desire to be with people. He had lived in the woods for a long time, and the ferryman's straw hut in which he had slept the previous night was the first roof he'd had over him in a long time. Outside the town, by a beautiful unfenced grove, the wanderer met a small train of men and women and women servants loaded with baskets. In the middle, in an ornamented sedan chair carried by 4 people, sat a woman, the mistress, on red cushions beneath a colored awning. Siddhartha stood still at the entrance to the grove and watched the procession. The men servants, the maids, and the baskets. He looked at the sedan chair and the lady in it. Beneath heaped up black hair, he saw a bright, very sweet, very clever face, a bright red mouth like a fleshy cut fig, artful eyebrows painted in high arch, dark eyes, clever and observant, and a clear, slender neck above her green and gold gown. The woman's hands were firm and smooth, long and slender, with broad gold bangles on her wrists. Siddhartha saw how beautiful she was, and his heart rejoiced. He bowed low as the sedan chair passed close by him, and raising himself again, gazed at the bright, fair face, and for a moment into the clever arched eyes, and inhaled the fragrance of a perfume which he did not recognize. For a moment, the beautiful woman nodded and smiled, then disappeared into the grove, followed by her servants. And so, thought Siddhartha, I enter this town under a lucky star. He felt the urge to enter the grove immediately, but he thought it over, for it had just occurred to him how the men servants and maids had looked at him at the entrance, so scornfully, so distrustfully, so dismissing in their glance. I am still Samana, he thought, still an ascetic and a beggar. I cannot remain one. I cannot enter the grove like this. And he laughed. He inquired from the first people that he met about the grove and the woman's name, and learned that it was the grove of Kamala, the well-known courtesan, and that besides the grove, she owned a house in the town. Then he entered the town. He had only one goal. Pursuing it, he surveyed the town, wandering about in the maze of streets, and stood still in places, and rested on the stone steps to the river. Towards the evening, he made friends with a barber's assistant, whom he had seen working in the shade of an arch. He found him again at prayer in the temple of Vishnu, where he related to him stories about Vishnu and Lakshmi. Oh, thank you for coming in, Lars. Good to see you too. I'm glad we can connect here on Haps. Everybody follow Lars, who hasn't already. We're getting to a part that reminds me so much of another book, and I will mention it here in a minute. Okay, towards the evening, he made friends with the barber's assistant whom he had seen working the shade of an arch. He found him again at prayer in the temple of Vishnu, where he related to him stories about Vishnu and Lakshmi. During the night, he slept among the boats on the river, and early in the morning, before the first customers arrived in the shop, he had his beard shaved off by the barber's assistant. He also had his hair combed and rubbed with fine oil. Then he went to bathe in the river. When the beautiful Kamala was approaching her grove late in the afternoon... No, don't worry. No one can replace you, Lalo. No one can replace you. Lars, I may have met Lars before I met you, Lalo. Or maybe at the same time. I met Lars. I don't know. I feel like I was playing records in my studio on this stereo console record player, and I was doing a series, like several scopes like this, and I feel like he was coming in all the time and commenting about it. I feel like that's my earliest memories of him. Anyway, when the beautiful Kamala was approaching her grove late in the afternoon in her sedan chair, Siddhartha was at the entrance. He bowed and received the courtesan's greeting. He beckoned to the servant who was last in the procession and asked him to announce to his mistress that a young Brahmin desired to speak to her. After a time, the servant returned, asked Siddhartha to follow him, conducted him silently into a pavilion where Kamala lay on a couch, and left him. Did you not stand outside yesterday and greet me? Asked Kamala. Yes, indeed, I saw you yesterday and greeted you. But did you not have a beard and long hair yesterday and dust in your hair? You. You have well observed. You have seen everything. You have seen Siddhartha, the Brahmin's son, who left his home in order to become a samana, and who was a samana for 3 years. Now, however, I have left that path and come into this town. And the first person I met before I reached the town was you. I have come here to tell you, O Kamala, that you are the first woman to whom Siddhartha has spoken without lowered eyes. Never again will I lower my eyes when I meet a beautiful woman. Kamala smiled and played with her fan made of peacock feathers and asked, Is that all that Siddhartha has come to tell me? I have come to tell you this and to thank you because you are so beautiful. And if it does not displease you, Kamala, I would like to ask you to be my friend and teacher, for I do not know anything of the art of which you are mistress. Thereupon, Kamala laughed aloud. It has never been my experience that a samana from the woods should come to me and desire to learn from me. Never has a samana with long hair and an old torn loincloth come to me. Many young men come to me, including Brahmin sons, but they come to me in fine clothes and fine shoes. There is scent in their hair and money in their purses. That is how these young men come to me, O Samana. Siddhartha said, I am already beginning to learn from you. I already learned something yesterday. Already I have got rid of my beard. I have combed and oiled my hair. There is not much more that is lacking, most excellent lady. Fine clothes, fine shoes, and money in my purse. Siddhartha has undertaken to achieve more difficult things than these trifles, and has attained them. Why should I not attain what I decided to undertake yesterday? To be your friend, and to learn the pleasures of love from you. You will find me an apt pupil, Kamala. I have learned more difficult things than what you have to teach me. So Siddhartha is not good enough for you as he is, with oil in his hair, but without clothes, without shoes, without money. Hold on, Siddhartha. Pump the brakes just a second. So you want to learn from her, but the minute she's like, well, normally this is what happens. And it wasn't even aggressive, I didn't think. He's like, well, I've learned more difficult things. How do you know? Clearly, you haven't learned it yet. Anyway, Kamala laughed and said, No, he is not yet good enough. He must have clothes, fine clothes, and shoes, fine shoes, and plenty of money in his purse, and presents for Kamala. Do you know now, Samana, from the woods? Do you understand? I understand very well, cried Siddhartha. How could I fail to understand when it comes from such a mouth? Your mouth is like a freshly cut fig, Kamala. My lips are also red and fresh, and will fit yours very well, you will see. But tell me, fair Kamala, are you not at all afraid of the samana from the forest who has come to learn about love? Why should I be afraid of a samana? A stupid samana from the forest who comes from the jackals and does not know anything about women. Oh, the samana is strong and afraid of nothing. He could force you, fair maiden. He could rob you. He could hurt you. No, Samana, I'm not afraid. um, I'm not afraid. Has a Samana or a Brahmin ever feared that someone could come and strike him and rob him of his knowledge, of his piety, of his power for depth of thought? No, because they belong to himself, and he can only give of them what he wishes, and if he wishes. That is exactly how it is with Kamala, and with the pleasures of love. Fair and red are Kamala's lips, but try to kiss them against Kamala's will, and not one drop of sweetness will you obtain from them, although they know well how to give sweetness. You are an apt pupil, Siddhartha, so also learn this. One can beg, buy, be presented with and find love in the streets, but it can never be stolen. You have misunderstood. Yes, it would be a pity if a fine young man like you misunderstood. Siddhartha bowed and smiled. You are right, Kamala. It would be a pity. It would be a very great pity. No, no drops of sweetness must be lost from your lips, nor nor from mine. So Siddhartha will come again when he has what he is lacking in clothes, shoes, money. But tell me, fair Kamala, can you not give me a little advice? Advice? Why not? Who would not willingly give advice to a poor, ignorant Samana who comes from jackals in the forest? Dear Kamala, where can I go in order to obtain these 3 things as quickly as possible? My friend, many people want to know that. You must do what you have learned and obtain money, clothes, and shoes for it. A poor man cannot obtain money otherwise. I can think, I can wait, I can fast. Nothing else? Nothing. Oh, yes, I can compose poetry. Will you give me a kiss for a poem? I will do so if your poem pleases me. What is it called? After thinking a moment, Siddhartha recited this verse. Into her grove went the fair Kamala. At the entrance to the grove stood the brown Samana. As he saw the lotus flower, deeply he bowed, smiling, acknowledged Kamala. Better, thought the young Samana, to take the sacrifices of the fair Kamala than to offer sacrifices to the gods. Kamala clapped her hands loudly so that the golden bangles tinkled. Your poetry is very good, brown Samana, and truly there's nothing to lose if I give you a kiss for it. She drew him to her with her eyes. He put his face against hers, placed his lips against hers, which were like a freshly cut fig. Do you think her lips were like a freshly cut fig? Have you ever sliced a fig in half? Do you know what a fig looks like when it's sliced in half? Kamala kissed him deeply, and to Siddhartha's great astonishment, he felt how much she taught him, how clever she was, how she mastered him, repulsed him, lured him, and how after this long kiss, a long series of other kisses, all different, awaited him. He stood still, breathing deeply. At that moment he was like a child astonished at the fullness of knowledge and learning which unfolded itself before his eyes. Your poetry is very good, said Kamala. If I were rich, I would give you money for it. But it will be hard. It will be hard for you to earn as much money as you want with poetry. Thanks. So apparently it was difficult in thousands of years ago to also to earn a living writing poems. Tell me more. But it will be hard. For you will need much money if you want to be Kamala's friend. How you can kiss Kamala? Stammered Siddhartha. Yes, indeed. That is why I am not lacking in clothes, shoes, bangles, and all sorts of pretty things. But what are you going to do? Can you not do anything else besides think, fast, and compose poetry? I also know the sacrificial songs, said Siddhartha, but I will not sing them any more. I also know incantations, but I will not pronounce them any more. I have read scriptures. I'm thinking it was. Wait, interrupted Kamala. Can you read and write? Certainly I can. Many people can do that. Not most people. I cannot. It is very good that you know how to read and write. Very good. You might even need the incantations. At that moment, a servant entered and whispered something in his mistress's ear. I have a visitor, said Kamala. Hurry and disappear, Siddhartha. Nobody must see you here. I will see you again tomorrow. However, she ordered the servant to give the holy Brahmin a white gown. Without quite knowing what was happening, Siddhartha was led away by the servant, conducted by a curious route to a garden house, presented with a gown, let into the thicket, and expressly instructed to leave the grove unseen as quickly as possible. Certainly, he did what he was told. Accustomed to the forest, he made his way silently out of the grove and over the hedge. Contentedly, he returned to the town, carrying his rolled-up gown under his arm. He stood at the door of an inn where travelers met, silently begged for food, and silently accepted a piece of rice cake. Perhaps tomorrow, he thought, I will not need to beg for food. He was suddenly overwhelmed with a feeling of pride. He was a Samana no longer. It was no longer fitting that he should beg. He gave the rice cake to a dog and remained without food. I freaking love this part. I freaking this part. He just decides he has no money, no. Well, he has a white gown now, but no shoes. He's in a new town. He doesn't know anyone except this woman that he's just met. He's just decided he's not a beggar anymore. So he gives the food away. There's such boldness and power in this moment right here. He knows exactly what he wants. He doesn't know exactly how he's going to get there. But he knows that his old patterns, his old ways of doing the things that he's done up until this point no longer will no longer help him get to this new place that he wants to go. Is it delusion? Lala thinks it's delusion. I say it's the moment he's decided he's going to let desire be a teacher to him. And I could just riff off of just this topic for another hour, but we only have like a page and a half to go of this, but I freaking love that part. He was suddenly overwhelmed with a feeling of pride. He was a samana no longer. It was no longer fitting that he should beg. He gave the rice cake to a dog and remained without food. The life that is lived here is simple, thought Siddhartha. It has no difficulties. Everything was difficult, irksome, and finally hopeless when I was a samana. Now everything is easy as the instruction in kissing which Kamala gives. I require clothes and money, that is all. These are easy goals which do not disturb one's sleep. He had long since inquired about Kamala's townhouse and called there the next day. Things are going well, she called across to him. Kamaswami expects you to call on him. He is the richest merchant in the town. If you please him, he will take you into his service. Be clever, brown samana. I had your name mentioned to him through others. Be friendly towards him. He's very powerful, but do not be too modest. I do not want you to be his servant, but his equal. Otherwise, I shall not be pleased with you. Kamaswami is beginning to grow old and indolent. If you please him, he will place great confidence in you. Siddhartha thanked her and laughed, and when she learned that he had not eaten that day, nor the previous day, she ordered bread and fruit to be brought to him and attended him. You've been lucky, she said to him on parting, one door after the other is being opened for you. How does that come about you? Have you a charm? No one likes rice cakes anyway. Siddhartha said, yesterday I told you I bet the dog ate it. I knew how to think, to wait, and to fast, but you did not consider these useful. But you will see that they are very useful, Kamala. You will see that the stupid samanas in the forest learn and know many useful things. The day before yesterday, I was still an unkempt beggar. Yesterday, I already kissed Kamala, and soon I will be a merchant and have money and all those things which you value. Quite, she agreed. But how could you have fared without me? Where would you be if Kamala did not help you? I don't like this tone that she has right here. My dear Kamala, said Siddhartha, and when I came to you in your grove, I made the first step. It was my intention to learn about love from the most beautiful woman. From that moment, I made the resolution. I also knew that I would execute it. I knew that you would help me. I knew it from your first glance at the entrance to the grove. And if I had not wanted, but you did want. Listen, Kamala, when you throw a stone into the water, it finds the quickest way to the bottom of the water. It is the same when Siddhartha has an aim, a goal. Siddhartha does nothing. He waits, he thinks, he fasts. But he goes through the affairs of the world like the stone through the water, without doing anything, without bestirring himself. He's drawn and lets himself fall. He is drawn by his goal, for he does not allow things to enter his mind which opposes his goal. That is what Siddhartha learned from the Samanas. It is what fools call magic, and what they think is caused by demons. Nothing is caused by demons. There are no demons. Everyone can perform magic. Everyone can reach his goal, if he can think, wait, and fast. Kamala listened to him. She loved his voice. She loved the look in his eyes. Perhaps it is as you say, my friend, she said softly, and perhaps it is also because Siddhartha is a handsome man, because his glance pleases women, that he is lucky. Siddhartha kissed her and said goodbye. May it be so, my teacher. May my glance always please you. May good fortune always come to me from you. Oh, thank you for this the sub. And that was the end of that chapter and the beginning of part 2. Oh my gosh. Do you guys remember when I read to you, and this was years ago, now, I read The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. And do you remember when Santiago, which, as you'll recall, because I've read the book several times, but Santiago, they only call him Santiago at the very first page. It's the only time they mention the boy's name. Goes into this town that is kind of like at the top of a hill, or has hills, this hilly town. And oh, I do too. Oh my God. At the top of this hill is a glass merchant. And Santiago comes to this town penniless. But he has a dream. He has a dream and a goal. And he climbs to the top of this hill, goes into this merchant's store, and notices that all of the glass, all of the vases, and the beautiful vases in the window are covered with dust. And he just says, listen, all of your glass is covered with dust. Let me dust your glass, and I'm pretty sure that people will buy more for you, if you just let me do this. Did you? Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's an accomplishment. And the merchant's like, whatever. And he does. And before you know it, people are like, can see the store from the top of the hill, or somebody comes in and buys the beautiful piece of glass, and like word spread that there's a beautiful glass shop at the top of this hill, and it becomes almost like a tourist attraction. And it just reminds me of this section of this book so much. There's just so many similarities here. Anyway, I just wish I had more time. This was a longer, I mean, I have all the time. I have all day, but I don't want to take up you guys' time all day. I really want to talk about, but maybe I'll just ask you to think about the notion of letting desire, like he's now letting desire be his teacher. And Kamala, like, is this wonderful symbol of desire. And in a lot of paths, including Tantra Buddhism, it is like it's a way to get to the same place. Because guess what? As soon as you have a desire, and you have a desire, and then you step on this path, and you find yourself walking to the top of this hill and dusting off glass, and you've accomplished this thing, and revel in beauty and wonderfulness and good feelings, that doesn't last. There's always something else. There's always something else, right? Which is what propels us all forward in life. Um, we're hardwired for this. We are hardwired to desire like the round, beautiful fruit on the tree and then that next one. This is like our biology. So he's gone from like just denying flat out all of this desire, wanting to embracing it. And I just really love it. I really love this part. Because at least at the same place, you do find out when you embrace your desires that there will always be more, but the going after is such a catalyst for growth, for um, self discovery, just as much, and maybe we can argue more because we're in this like wonderland of called Earth of like anything you can think of to do, you can go try to do it. I'm not saying you can achieve it, but you can go try it. You can go try to do it, um, and learn so much about yourself along the way. And I'm really rambling now. I just have so much to say about it, but I'll let you go. So much to say, like this, it's aligning with myself personally because I've spent a lot of years in like this like a denial phase of my life, and I feel like I'm in a phase now where the most healthiest thing for me to do is to kind of expand outward in all these different directions, and it might look chaotic from the outside, um, but it's making sense to me. Anyway, be curious, Adam. You have to be curious. Thank you. I will try and find the name. Thank you so much, Adam. Um, the name of that movie and maybe it's called The Selkie. I can't remember, but I'll come back and I'll comment on this stream. So check back. I I won't be on tomorrow, um, but I'll be on Friday, and I meant to try Twitch or some other form this week, but it just kind of slipped my mind, and I forgot to warn you guys. So I'll be back on Friday morning at 9 a.m. Chicago time, and we'll try and do the Twitch thing, maybe Twitch or Instagram or something next week. Okay, thanks for the